Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, the Petite Primary, and welcome to today's live on ways to prepare for your PGCE during the summer holidays, when we all have we like to think of it as a break, but we all like to be proactive in some form or another. So today I'm going to share with you some ways that you can prepare, go into your PGCE a little bit more confident and ready, and that's what we're going to do today. So the reason I'm just starting with it straight away is because for those that are watching, I promised that I would save this afterwards, so I don't want them to wait and do that weird bit at the beginning where they just wait for something to start. So I'm going to jump right into it. Hello to everyone who has joined. Wow, there are so many of you, all of you waving hello. If you have any questions at any point, feel free to plonk them into the little comment part and I will try and answer it when and where I see them. So the first thing I would like to talk about, and I've decided to split this live into two sections. So I'm going to do the first section as subject knowledge and the second one as assignments. Because if you are just doing your QTS without a PGCE, that's absolutely fine, go, that's your decision, brilliant. That just means that part won't really apply to you because you won't have assignments as such. So just a little disclaimer. And another disclaimer is that if you haven't seen my stories that I posted just before this, all of these are completely optional. You can pass your PGCE, you can get QTS, you can be an amazing trainee teacher without doing any of this beforehand. So this is really just for you if you will feel more secure within yourself to do some preparation beforehand, or if you're just one of those people who like to be a bit organised and look ahead, absolutely fine. But I just want to reassure you, because I have had some people message me saying, some people have tons of notes and they've got loads of flashcards and I haven't done anything. Chill, it's fine. So on to the first section, which is about subject knowledge. Now I am a primary school teacher. I did train to be a primary school teacher, but I will obviously try and bear in mind that there are some secondary trainees in here. So some of it might be primary based, but I'm going to try and do it general so everyone can benefit from this. So one way that you can prepare is becoming familiar with your subject knowledge. So this could be absolutely anything in the national curriculum. Now you are not expected, and I will repeat, you are not expected to know the whole entire national curriculum before you even start. I mean, technically I should have finished my NQT year and I don't know the whole national curriculum because I haven't taught every single year group. And you will find that you pick things, as you go, but don't feel pressure to know the whole national curriculum. What I would say is if you already know which year you are going to be going into for your training year, I would read the expectations for that year and maybe just briefly skim through the year below that and the year above that. So if you know you are going into year 3, have a quick look as well at the year 2 and then at the year 4, because there will be some children that they are lower ability and they will be working at a younger age level, or some that are requiring mastery challenges, constantly being like, I get this, and that you might want to consider what they will have to do in year 4. There are some nice overviews for the national curriculum on Twinkle, which are categorised nicely into all the subjects, and I think they fit it either on an A3 or an A4 sheet. So the font is very small, but it's all there and all really concise. So if you have Twinkle, I would recommend having a look there if you're trying to get used to the national curriculum, things like that. Another thing, and this is a bit primary, sorry guys, if you're secondary, but for primary, I would really recommend, especially if you are in Key Stage 1, practicing your phonics. Just how you pronounce the sounds, because obviously there's the name of the letters and then there's the sound of the letters. And I really was not an expert in phonics at all. I went in very much with the mindset of I prefer Key Stage 2, but look, I ended up being a year 1 teacher, so you know, don't just think, oh, I'm going to year 3, that will be fine, because at some point you will be put into the opposite key stage. So if you started in Key Stage 2, you will at some point be moved to a Key Stage 1 placement. So that's always useful for you to do while you are during your summer and you have time. I would also have a look into the phonics screening test, what that requires and, you know, what that is about. Because that's always good if you are expected to teach any phonics lessons, plan any phonics lessons, you can be like, right, they need to be able to read both alien words and real words, so I'm going to put a little activity in my lesson about that, something like that. Similar to that kind of idea is SATs papers. Now, if you were doing primary, then you probably, or maybe, will have had some kind of test to test your maths and English knowledge during your interview. I know that for me, I think it was a previous SATs paper, both for maths and SPAG, which stands for spelling, punctuation and grammar. So you might want to, especially if you're in upper key stage 2, or you're teaching year 2, just have a look at some previous SATs papers just to see, okay, this is what they will be expected to know, this is the kind of level we're at. Because I was really surprised when I did that maths paper, and I thought I completely forgot that we learnt that in primary school as well as secondary school. So that's always good, just to check that your subject knowledge is there. And that links nicely actually to my next point. So another way that you can practice your subject knowledge is through kind of revision books. Now I think, and if anyone knows the books I mean, please correct me, I couldn't find any myself, but I think they're called CPG books. It's like a company and they do lots of revision on kind of grammar and writing and maths, all that kind of jazz. And it's really useful just to kind of bridge the gap of anything that you're not sure of. So let's say you did that maths paper and you were like, oh gosh, I forgot the difference between mode, median and mean, something like that. Well, then you could go into that book, CGP, thank you Michelle, CGP, and you know, just then, what was I saying? Oh yeah, recap in that book. So something like that. But obviously you don't have to buy these books. There are exercises that you can just find online. Absolutely no harm in that whatsoever. For secondary, high secondary trainees, I haven't forgotten about you. You can do the same thing. Now, definitely have a look at the subject knowledge, because obviously you need to be an expert in that topic. You know, I did find an interesting post the other day, actually. I think it was on the Aspiring Teacher Forum Facebook group, and they said, oh, as a trainee, will they likely put me with the younger years, or, you know, will they just shove me in whatever year? And they said they will just put you in whatever year that they need you to teach in. Even when you're in ECT, it's not that with experience they'll put you with older children. That's not how it works. So I've just grabbed some of my brother's books. You can also get subject knowledge books about yours. So for example, here I've got an Edexcel GCSE revision guide, which is always useful, and then AQA physics. So there's different exam boards as well. If you do know your placement beforehand and there's a way for you to find out, then maybe try and find out what exam board they teach with, because when I went to secondary, every single GCSE subject was something different. So I can just imagine if a trainee went to my school, they'd be like, huh? But yeah, that's another thing for you to look at as well, because all exam boards will do things slightly differently. One last thing I would say for subject knowledge, and this isn't necessarily subject knowledge as such, but it will be supportive in terms of your planning. And I think this could apply to any teacher really in any year group, is to read some books that you might use in your classroom. So I just happen to have a Key Stage 1 here. We're going on a bear hunt, absolute classic, but you might want to, just as practice, have a flick through and just brainstorm, even if it's like 10 seconds, just do a spider map of different lessons that you can think of using that book. And actually I've heard of some ECT, well, NQT, now ECT interviews, having that as an activity. Here's a book, can you design like 5 lessons using it? So this might just be a really nice way for you to kind of get your planning head on, your hat on, whatever you want to call it, and just have a go. And obviously Key Stage 1 books will be nice and quick to read, but Key Stage 2 books, you know, you'll have to take your time with reading it. It's a good opportunity to see, oh, these are some nice vocabulary that I'll just write down, especially if, I don't know if this is the case with anyone, let me know, but if any of you have gone to your school and met your mentors, and if any of your mentors have said, hey, this is what we're reading, you know, they've given you kind of a head start on that, I would definitely go ahead and read it, because when you're not experienced and you're not used to, I don't want to say the word winging, but, you know, kind of improvising a little bit, that's really hard to do if you don't know the book and obviously you're new to teaching. So no harm. Enjoy some children's literature. Reading for pleasure is super important to promote. So, you know, do the right thing by modelling and reading some things yourself. Okay, let me see. My phone is balancing, so I'm really scared that it's going to fall. But let's have a look at some of your questions, or if you've got anything. Chris said letters and sounds YouTube videos is good for this as well. Yeah, absolutely. For phonics pronunciation, she has some videos, I think, on the phonics screening test, and I've also seen her videos before for teacher standard evidence. I think I watched a part 2 one about British values, something like that. So yeah, she's a really good recommendation to watch. Oh, I told you it's going to fall. A good place to support yourself with subject knowledge. Look at White Rose home learning videos. Absolutely. Bullet Bumblebee, I think you're talking about Twinkle. Twinkle is paid for. There are some free resources on there though. Let's see. Oh, that's another thing actually. Oh, is it going to balance? Yes. One thing that really took me aback, talking about spelling, punctuation and grammar, and this can apply for any year group teacher as well, is when you're fluent in a language, it's really easy to forget those kind of words for things. So, you know, when it came to clauses and different tenses, I was like, I've forgotten which one's which. Can I have an example, please? So yes, definitely have a look at that, because when you've got like subordinating clause and a fronted adverbial, like now I know what that is, but at the time when I first started, I was like, remind me. Anything specific for maths knowledge, this subject defo scares me the most. Do you know what? That's actually really interesting that you say that, Fran, because it scared me the first as well. And that was the subject that my mentor really had to kick me towards and be like, this is your scariest one, so do that one first, and then the rest will feel like a breeze. And actually, I feel a lot more confident planning maths now, especially as there's a right and wrong answer, and I think it's easier to differentiate as well. I might be completely wrong there. Some people will be like, what? But yeah, that's just my personal experience. How does everyone else feel about their subject knowledge? Do you feel like it's somewhere that you've got a lot of room to work on, or you're not really sure where you stand in terms of your knowledge? Like it's been ages since primary or secondary and you're like, oh, I don't know. What scares me the most is not being able to balance teaching and social life. Well, I'm not the best one to give advice there, because I wasn't great at it, but I really think it's about seizing every single second you have. Now, I had a year 1 observation once, and they said to me, right, you weren't fully prepared beforehand. And I thought, well, when was I going to do that? I mean, there was no time in the middle. I had everything prepared, just not on the tables. And especially with year 1, you know, they get fidgety, they start talking. And she said, well, you joined in with the Go Noodle. You know, put that on for them to have a brain break, a little move around. You should be running around and preparing everything. And you know, for some reason I just hadn't even thought of that, but literally seize any single second you can. There's also lots of ways to save on marking, because I know that marking can take absolutely donkey years when you're not experienced with it, and you know, you're there writing these lovely comments. Granted, that depends on the marking policy of the school, but I've got a video of 10 marking tips that will really save you time and avoid doing things after school. Oh, hang on, sorry. Miss Goodman, I feel like I know that I don't know enough, and so that worries me going into teaching. Plus, no idea how to plan a lesson in the first place. Okay, right, so I do have a video, I think I have 2 videos on lesson planning, where I showed you the lesson plan that I used, that our skit used to do lesson planning. I am sure that your skit or PGCE, depending on if you're, with a provider or at uni, they will go through the lesson plan with you. They will show you examples. If not, then don't be scared to ask. In terms of planning generally, I don't think you would be expected to do that in your first week, but by all means try and get involved in the planning with your mentor. So you can be like, how do you structure a lesson, or how do you write it down so you remember? When I first started, I would write out the full lesson plan because that was the expectation, and then I would also have little post-it notes of the key times that I wanted. So I'd say the starter, I want it to be this long, and the learning part, I want it to be this long, and the plenary this long, because I found that otherwise either I would be like, oh yay, they're learning, and just miss the plenary completely, or I would talk too long during the input to make sure they knew what they were doing, and then they wouldn't have enough learning time. So I really, was very, not necessarily obsessive, but structured in my lesson plans. But then with practice and confidence, you do start to reduce all those little notes that you make. And at some point, hopefully your skip provider or uni will say to you, okay, you don't have to make these lesson plans as thorough. But please, if at any point you don't feel confident in what you're doing, just ask for help. You should have mentor meetings every single week, and they should be like, okay, where do you think you need support on, or what do you want to talk about? And feel free to just say, I don't know where I'm going with lesson planning. There's no harm in that whatsoever. Right, let's have a look. Heather says, any advice for someone who is doing their PGCE in 1 year? I have just completed 4 years at uni, and this is the first teaching course I've done as I'm a performing arts graduate. I'm not sure if there are PGCEs that are more than 1 year, maybe unless you go part-time. I did mine in 1 year, and the biggest advice I would say is, the pace is quick, but you're going to learn so much. So if you feel like in the first, first, second, third, fourth week, and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to qualify and be ready by the end of the term? But trust me, you learned so much. And the biggest thing is to not compare your progress with others. I'm very open about this. I have a video about it on my channel. I got a cause for concern in my PGCE, and there was a risk that I would completely fail and not gain my QTS. Meanwhile, some people on my course were getting outstanding lessons every single time, and it's so easy to sit there and compare and just be like, well, I'm a rubbish teacher, they're a great teacher. But our kids were completely different, the demographic was completely different, our year groups were completely different. It's really difficult to compare, but yeah, everyone progresses differently. You will learn so much, so don't think at any point you are not doing a good enough job, because the reason you're training is because you're not qualified. You are training, you are learning to do the job. And I think sometimes we feel like we have to go in knowing it all, ready to just teach, but that's not how it goes. So that's a really weird piece of advice, but just don't panic, take your time, go with whatever spontaneous learning opportunity you come across, and just try and flow with it. Constantly reflect to make yourself a better teacher, make that lesson better, and that's honestly the best thing that you can do for your own practice. Otherwise, the rest of the tips are probably very specific in terms of your situation or your children, or your lesson feedback, but yeah, don't panic, don't compare, and just embrace every single feedback and reflect is the biggest tip that I can give for a PGCE year. No matter what your degree, it won't make a difference. You will still, that's fine. If it wasn't education related, absolutely fine. For me, knowing what subordinate clauses and specific terminology like that is something I was never taught or if I was, I don't remember. I didn't remember either, to be fair, so you might not be the only one. So definitely need to focus on specific terminology, absolutely. And, you know, I recommended some books because I think books are, some people prefer books, you know, the practicality of pen to paper and writing it down and using it in examples and getting used to it. Some people love it. You might just prefer going on to BBC Bitesize, looking at the national curriculum. So you'd say, okay, year 6, they need to know this, this, this. I don't know what 2 out of those 3 things mean. I'm going to look at it on BBC Bitesize or Google and then just make a note of it. That is enough for you because you are still, you know, expanding on your knowledge. You are bridging any gaps in that knowledge that you had. It doesn't need to be fancy on cool notes or you spend money. As long as you're learning on the go, then that's the best thing that you can do. And I think the SCIT or PGCE will really appreciate those efforts, and, you know, so will the children in the long run. Fran, is there anything you wish you would have known before starting your teaching journey? I think I had this question in my PGCE frequently asked questions, and I really struggled to answer it. The biggest thing I would say that I learned is, or wish I would have known, is how tricky some children find it to learn. I mean, I was kind of second top table pretty much consistently throughout my whole education. I then went to a grammar school and, you know, I never really found it difficult to learn. Of course, sometimes I lacked in the intrinsic motivation, or there were some subjects that I just thought, oh my goodness, but some children really find it difficult to learn. And during that time where you can trial and error, speak to different people, observe different teachers, I would really try and gather a whole bank of tools or resources to try and support children that may find learning difficult for different reasons. They might have experienced ACEs, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, or they might have attachment issues, which means they will just try and push your buttons, but actually all they want to do is to feel loved and, you know, feel safe. Or they might have special educational needs. All of these different things, I didn't realise how difficult it was to teach some children. And I don't want to say difficult, but like all the challenges that can arise, not out of their control at all. You know, I kind of thought, oh, as long as you've got the behaviour management, you know, clap your hands a few times, they'll just listen to you. But that's really not the case. And I think that's one thing I wish I would have known before I started, so that I could instantly, you know, maybe during the summer, try and Google some different resources, try and have some idea of behaviour management strategies, maybe have an idea of just 2 or 3 different individual rewards that I can have for a child in case one doesn't work, that kind of thing. If anyone is here who has done their PGCE, would you like to answer that question as well, or their teaching journey? Because I'd be interested to know what other people think. You're welcome, Heather. Sarah, do you have experience of your class teacher not being your mentor, unsure how this works? Well, I have to say, my mentor, I was her first trainee, but she was absolutely lovely. And I think as an educator, whether you are in your first year, your 5th year, your 26th year, you are constantly learning. And so she was kind of learning alongside me. She was SLT, she was RE lead, she was English lead, she was a full-time class teacher. She had so much under her belt, and then to be my mentor as well. But I think that taught me quite a few valuable lessons about resilience, about patience, about juggling the multiple different hats you have to wear. Yeah, so I don't think there was a point where I was like, she doesn't know what she's doing, because a lot of the time it's just supporting you and being the best teacher. So they kind of adapt to, you know, how your lesson went or what your needs are. Or if you're scared of teaching maths, how can, I keep saying she, but your mentor, be it a female or a male, how can they help you with that lesson? So I don't think it's possible for a mentor to not know what they're doing, unless they're really just sticking to their ways and being like, right, well, this is how we do it here, copy, even if it doesn't work for you, then maybe in that case. But again, it's about the communication. Tell them that you're not comfortable with XYZ. Tell them that you don't understand what they mean, or just then go to your skip provider or your uni and just tell them. I know that some of my skip colleagues had issues and they just went straight to our provider just to tell them, because you don't want your teacher training to be jeopardized because of a mentor knowing how much money you are paying and knowing you've got that 1 year limit, really. Let's see. Right, I'm going to answer a few more questions if there are any, and then I will go on to the second kind of part of the live. I freaked out about subordinate clause adverbials in my NQT year. Hey, there you go. Now I know them off like the back of my hand. Learn on the job, like you say. Exactly, we're always learning. A few behaviour management techniques and your belt is useful, definitely. And mentors should have training. Okay, well there you go. So they will have had some training of some sort. Losing my voice. I don't know how quick I'm talking, by the way. Sorry if I'm like a billion words per hour, or if you're trying to take notes. Okay, so the second part of this live, I did say I was going to do it about PGCE assignments. Now, some of you will have come straight from maybe your undergraduate's degree, or some of you will be, I don't know, career changers. And so there might be some people who are like, oh, assignments, uni assignments, that's fine. I can bash them out in a week and be very confident with it. Some of you might be panicking and thinking, it's been 2 decades since I wrote, you know, an educational assignment. And so no matter where you are, then I would recommend doing these 3 things. And there might be more that come up, or if any of you have ideas in the comments, let me know, but these are the 3. So the first one is to practice referencing. Now, I did a psychology degree, and all 3 years was based on APA referencing. And so I'm like, okay, well, you know, I remember that. It was, what, like 4 months since I last wrote an essay. I'll remember that, that'll be fine. I arrive. Oh, yes, so I would expect everything in Harvard referencing. Sorry, what now? I didn't know what Harvard referencing was, didn't know how to do it. They didn't tell us how, because a lot of the people on my course were like, yeah, that's cool, that's what I did. And I just kind of thought to myself, what's happening? I don't know what that is. So I would try and find out during this summer what kind of referencing system your uni uses, and then just practice using it, because even once I got, you know, past that mental wall at first, by the time I did my second assignment, the whole thing, the whole like mental block was there again. And I was like, how do I do Harvard referencing? So during this time, I would pick from whatever, like a book, an article, maybe like a PDF, something like that. And I would just practice in the system, in the referencing system that your uni works with, just practice doing some references. And you might find, I'm not going to recommend anything because I'm never sure of like the full accuracy and reliability of the websites, but you might find a website that helps you with that. You might find a cool trick on Microsoft Word that helps you with that. Awesome. But at least practice just doing a few, just so you can get used to it, because when you're doing especially a master's level assignment, you might have 2 or 3 pages of referencing. And if every single reference takes you an absolute age, even if one reference takes you 10 minutes, 10 minutes by the amount that you can fit on 3 pages, that's just time that you don't necessarily have. Or whoever asked me the question about, you know, work-life balance, balancing work with your social life, those are the type of things that will, you know, bug you down and remove you from having that social life. So a little thing, you know, just spend, if you want, 20 minutes on it during the whole summer, just practicing, just one afternoon, and that will, you know, already help you out. Just write a little note, okay, this is what I did, this is how you do it, and then there you go. That will save you so much time in the long run once you actually start there. Because I got into the bad habit of writing my whole thing, and I would highlight my reference in yellow so I didn't lose it, and then I would leave it till the last thing, and it would honestly take me so long. Yes, there is a citation button on Google Scholar. It's not always accurate though. I have noticed that sometimes, yeah, it needs a tweak. So just a reminder to check it. But yes, it definitely speeds things up. Things like that, little tricks, but you can find those little tricks out during summer. Another thing is to practice note taking. Now, the joys of journal articles, they can be 2 pages long, 5 pages long, 10 pages long, 25 pages long, or I once found one that was 32 pages long. We don't have time for that. So practice note-taking, practice skim reading and finding the key parts of that text, the key parts that answer your question, the key parts that will support the current paragraph or argument that you are on, and really practice writing concise summaries for yourself. The first year of uni was absolutely horrific for me. Nobody taught me how to do that. I had no idea what I was doing, how to do it. So out of a 12-page, maybe journal article, I would have about 8 pages of notes. And so if I was to use that in an assignment, I would have to read 8 pages of notes in order to find something that would support me. So I'm not going to tell you guys, you know, how that causes problems. You will know, you will figure it out. But yes, definitely practice reading. Even if you read just a page of something that interests you, just Google something random, and then try and make that page into like 5 lines or less. Practice doing something like that, because that will really, really help you. Again, one of those time-saving things that seems like a chore now, but might save you hours and hours worth of work come a week when you're super stressed and you realise that your deadline is coming up. Again, like for note-taking, there's no art to it. Some people will, and I envy you if you are one of those people, can just do like a mind map and just spread it out across an A3 and then, you know, that's it. Some of you have to do bullet points, some of you prefer to write it as a paragraph, and whatever your thing, just try and find a note-taking system that you are confident with, that you can do in a quick and efficient manner, and one that is kind of easy to navigate. So you don't want to have loads and loads of text on a screen that you have to manually read every single word for, because it's summary. It's meant to save you time. What would you say the jump is like between writing essays from undergrad to PGCE level? Not gonna lie, even by the 3rd one, I still didn't really get it. I was never good at predicting the grade that I got. The first one I actually didn't reach a master's level at, and I was really surprised. By the end of the year, when I retook it, so actually I did 4 essays that year, I did get a master's level, but I couldn't really tell the difference. I think the difference really is in the knowledge that you put into it and, you know, the level. Before it was very much, this person said this and this person disagreed with this person, and so in conclusion, blah, blah, blah. But I think now you really need to be extremely thorough and use, you know, real terminology that before you could have just kind of written for maybe a clever A-level person, but now you're really trying to write an academic journal. And I know that doesn't really help, but I think it's also trial and error. Ask the uni or the provider if they can give you some previous examples. I found that the previous examples, even though it was a completely random question that had nothing to do with ours, was really helpful just to see kind of the structure of the essay and, you know, the kind of language that they used. Right, let me just see if there's any other questions before that. Okay, right, so there was one. Sorry, I don't know your name. DMJP. Do we get to choose our master level subject? So if you are doing, do you mean that as like a master's degree or the PGCE at master's level? Can you give us an example of an assignment question? Oh, my last one, I can tell you my last one because this was very flexible and related to your own experience. My last one was something like, talk to us about an area of professional development that you would like to develop. Something like that. And I spoke, I don't know if you can tell that I'm very passionate about it, but I spoke about the children, you know, and the impact ACEs can have on them and their education and how we can support them. And within this, so it was very much kind of mental health and children kind of essay, I then also spoke about children with special educational needs, because they often have a coexisting, comorbid, or an associating kind of mental health illness, or, you know, traits of a mental health illness. So there's a common association between autism and anxiety, I believe it is, and then ADHD and depression. So very often, if there is a child with ADHD, they might often show traits of depression. And so I was talking about that, and how in my professional development I want to find out how I can help them more, because it's not necessarily just, oh, I've got a calm corner in my classroom, off you go, that's it. You know, there's a lot more to that. So it was very interesting to research as well, and something that I was passionate about. So that was an example. Another example was there was one that had a lot to do with English and phonics, but I've forgotten the exact title. But it was really difficult because I didn't even know all of these little terminologies. Like I said, phonics isn't my strong point. Like a phoneme, a grapheme, a morpheme, morphology. I was like, what does all of this mean? So definitely, you know, if you are primary, look into phonics, because it is so important. I don't think mental health like that was being spoken about for children when I studied 10 years ago. Oh, well, there you go. I mean, now it's definitely part of that whole category of an inclusivity, you know, an inclusive classroom. I think 10 years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, but we were probably still in the kind of education system where the child would adapt to the system, whereas now it's the system adapts to the child. And I think that's so powerful, and something that everyone should look into. Inclusive education, look into it, because that's a really important one. Oh, actually, I do remember. My second one was about special educational needs, and I chose autism, and it was about how you can make education more inclusive for, you know, and then a special educational needs. So I chose autism, and autism was so interesting because whenever you said one thing, the next thing was just an exception to that rule, because not every child with autism is the same, and it's the spectrum. So one could really need that sensory kind of stimulation. Another one needs exactly the opposite, and they need no sensory input whatsoever, because otherwise it's overwhelming. So that was really interesting as well. But I don't have any other examples from other people, I'm afraid, but often they're very flexible, and you can kind of, without changing the question, it will often be a word that you could kind of change and adapt to something that interests you. But definitely, if you have the option, choose something that interests you. Don't go for an easy topic. Choose something that interests you, because otherwise, all that reading, all that writing, if you're tired and you're stressed and you've got so many other things going on, you don't want to be reading about something you don't necessarily care about. Sorry, I'm just being blunt. I'm just being honest with you guys. Let's see what other people are saying. Okay, so is PGCE a master's? How does it work? So a PGCE is 60 credits of a master's degree. So a master's degree, I believe, is 180 credits in total. So a PGCE is essentially a third of the total credits you need for a master's. However, this only applies if you pass your PGCE at master's level. So when you're doing the assignments, you could either reach it at a master's level, or you could pass at an undergraduate level. Or if you don't get an undergraduate level, then you fail the assignment. So like I was saying before, I don't know if you were already on here, but my first one I passed at an undergraduate level. So I redid it and got it to that master's level. If you get it at a master's level, what that means is you could later use these credits towards completing a full master's. That's just basically what it means. But, there's absolutely no harm in just passing it at an undergraduate level, because you still get 2 qualifications at the end, and it's the QTS that is the status you need to become a teacher. The PGCE is kind of like an extra. Some people don't do a PGCE at all and just the QTS. Do we have to choose a specialism? Oh, sorry. You don't have to choose a specialism. I think it was because of my course for concern, to be honest, but I really wanted to do an MFL specialism because I am fluent in French, hence the petite in Petite Primary, but they just discouraged me from doing it. Some people did, like a maths and English one. I don't know if it benefited them in the long term or getting a job, but you don't have to. What were your main reading sources for your assignments? Journals, books, websites? So your uni will probably prefer certain ones. I think like even when there was a website dedicated to autism, they still weren't very keen on the website. So sadly it is mostly journals, books, or you might find some books or journals that have been made into PDFs. That's also fine. And that's actually what I was going to talk about as my last tip, you know, after that huge tangent. The third tip was I have a Google Scholar video. Granted, it's fairly old and it's, you know, not one of my best, but, you know, I'm always developing. And I kind of give you lots and lots of tricks on how to find articles that are suitable for your assignment. Because you can often put, you know, keywords in and you find so random articles that aren't at all relevant. And you're like, how did we get there? So, you know, I've shown you lots of different tricks so that you can find things that are important to you. And that might be one thing that you want to practice during the summer, is just making up a title for yourself. Just thinking like, okay, I liked the idea that Annalise just said about autism and being inclusive and different treatments or ways to support children with autism in schools. Let's just make up a random title for that. And then I'm going to see if I can get a list of several different articles that are helpful for me using the tips from the Google Scholar video, which is so annoying that I don't have the swipe up link. If you would like the video link, then just message me and I'll send it to you directly. And then, see where it all links in, try and reference it using the referencing system that your uni does. See, all links together. I thought it through, right? I thought it through. That is it for me though. I am thinking of doing another live next week with some more tips on things you can do. But again, do not feel pressured to do any of this. You know, if you are completely out of your mind, bonkers busy, doing a full-time job during the summer, do not panic, okay? I don't want anyone panicking. I founded the Unlock Teach Talk hashtag to encourage teachers to have a work-life balance. I don't want you panicking. But yes, does anyone have some last minute questions? Marta Bailey, do not worry, I will save this. Hopefully nothing will go wrong and it will save. But yes, any questions, anyone, before I bid you guys adieu and, you know, have a great evening? Let me have a drink first. You are more than welcome, everybody. Grace, teacher-mentor relationship tips. That's really difficult because it depends on what type of person you are. It depends what type of person they are. But no matter what type of person either of you are, really try and just communicate. Even if you hate each other's guts, just communicate, because they might not know what's going on with you or what your struggles are if you don't really talk. And then you also don't know what they're looking for. If you keep getting kind of not negative, but very critical comments in your lesson observations, then, you know, just talk to them about it. How can I improve? What are you looking for? I have also done videos about mentor meetings, what to expect, how to prepare, so that you can arrive at that mentor meeting prepared, ready to go, and there's none of this kind of faffing like, oh, you know, I don't know what to do or what to say, or, oh, I haven't thought of that bullet point, you put me on the spot there, because anything like that, you know, both of your times are precious. You want to really be productive and have good communication where you both know what you want from each other and that you're not scared to just talk. And also it helps if, for example, there's no TA in the classroom, and this was a journey for both my mentor and I. By the end, we kind of had non-verbal body language going on. So I would be teaching and I would just look at a child and then look at her and she knew, right, I want you to go with that child. And that comes with time, but really, you know, just be kind, be considerate. She might be she or he might be stressed, you might be stressed, but just keep talking all the time. Teaching is so much more about teamwork than people realise. You know, you and your mentor, you and your TA, you and the team teacher, you and your head teacher, you know, it's just loads and loads of relationships within a school. So just really try and, I know with COVID it's difficult, but try and just benefit from each other, you know, talk to each other. Really, really important. You're welcome, Sam. What year group will you teach in September? Ooh, sensitive question to put me on the spot there. My last video was actually an update on my teaching journey. So actually I do not have a position ready for September. I was a year 1 teacher on a temporary contract, and my contract just wasn't made permanent, and I have yet to secure a position. So at the moment I'm a flexible person. I don't know. I did have an interview in an SEN school, and although I wasn't successful, they liked me so much that they sent me as a recommendation to their sister school, who reached out to me, but that role just wasn't for me. That wasn't quite what I was looking for. But who knows, I might end up in an SEN school, which would be a completely new experience, but I'm very open to that. So at the moment, it's a I don't know to that answer. What's the hardest part of teaching life? I think the hardest part of teaching life, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but at least for me, especially as I don't have children, is that I find it really hard to switch off. Even if I'm not physically doing anything work related, I'll be thinking of a child like, oh, how are they doing? Are they having a good evening? Oh, they went well today. I hope they're okay now. Or, you know, how can I help this person with their reading? Because they never read at home and they're not getting parental input. What can I do that's extra? They've already got interventions. They've already got one-to-one reading. They're on my daily... It's things like that. And maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm very type A, or I'm kind of an anxious person. Maybe it just replays in my head, but I think that's the hardest part to switch off. I think maybe if you've got a family and you're very on the go and you walk through the door and you suddenly got dinner to do and this and that and that, maybe it's easier to switch off because there's a like disassociation between the two, or like a disconnection. But I find that really difficult. And then obviously when you're thinking about it and maybe you have an idea, then you want to carry out the idea, and then you open the laptop and then it all starts again. Michelle, thanks so much. Excited and apprehensive about starting my PGCE at a skit in September. Oh, well, good luck and congratulations on getting your place. Also, just a quick reminder, I know on here I don't have very many posts and I'm quite new to Instagram, but I have over 70 videos on my YouTube channel, which is Petite Primary, spelt the same, just without the at the beginning. And I've got a whole playlist of just the PGCE/skit videos. So if you kind of don't want the other videos or the ones about me, you can just go on that playlist. Even if you just want to leave it run in the background, or find a specific topic that you need help on, like that mentor meetings, that if you want that, or Google Scholar tips, or if you want to know about things you should ask your placement before you begin, I've got a whole video on that. Then yeah, it's all in that playlist. Liz, quick question about starting the PGCE. Are we expected to take whole lessons straight away, or do we only observe to begin with? I mentioned this in my... Sorry, I'm kind of sat on my knees. I mentioned this in my PGCE FAQs. So again, it's very dependent on yourself, but in the first week, I would imagine that you would solely observe. If you have previously been a TA and you are super confident, then you might end up taking register in the morning or reading a book at the end of the day, or you might take a little part of the lesson, but most likely you'll probably just observe in the first week. Then depending on the progression, the second, third and fourth week, it really depends on you, unless your skit provider or PGCE uni provider is very strict on, you know, when you start teaching, but you might just ease into it. It will never be take a whole lesson straight away. So it might be do a starter for me, do the plenary, or maybe take a group out. It might be something like, right, well, the mentor, will plan and you deliver the lesson, so at least they know that it's going to be a good lesson and that it's all structured for you. But I think it is very flexible. Again, speak with your mentor about it, but the correct rate for you. Oh, Georgina, thank you very much. Do you think creating a teachergram has helped you with inspiration from others? Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that sometimes I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. But no, sometimes in the sense that I'm kind of thinking, why have I not made a super pretty display like that? Or that looks like a really cute Instagram activity, but I can't imagine it engaging 30 children for more than 2 minutes. Yeah, so yes and no. I mean, it depends. If you just like it for the aesthetics and you're like, oh, that's so cute. Or maybe you've got kids and you're like, oh, I'll save that. Brilliant. But sometimes I think it's very easy to play the compare game. Even for me, I've just finished my first NQT term and I'm looking at some of the people preparing for their ECT year. They're not even in the classroom yet and I'm already slightly jealous. So yeah, like all social media, it can have its pros and cons. So I've just realised I've shrunk, but my legs are killing me. I'm just sat on them. My mentor said I have 8 SEN in our class next year and no TA. Okay, don't panic. Do you know what? It might end up being the children without SEN that you spend most time with. But do not panic. If you know what type of SEN they have, then try and look into it. Try and look into interventions that they might need or that they might already have, so you're familiar with it. Look into the traits that they might show or the symptoms that they have and have a look at how you can support them. Because, I mean, SEN could even be things with dyslexia, in which case it's very, you know, writing and reading focused. But, you know, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to make it trickier for you. It might just mean that you need to think more about your differentiation. Oh, thank you for your good wishes for a new position. That's really sweet. Thank you. Love your YouTube stuff. Been so helpful. Oh, thank you very much. I've never had a laptop. But if there are no questions left, then I will probably leave it there. I think an hour is a good amount of CPD and thinking time. But yes, definitely, you know, go and check out my YouTube channel, check out that playlist. If you were interested in any of the videos that I've mentioned, such as the Google Scholar one or the mentor meeting, then, you know, just message me, or even if you say, do you have any videos on this, then I can send you the link directly. Apart from that, have a good evening, everyone, and yes, see you next week. Bye!